Well, given we have an investor event down in northern New South Wales this afternoon that we've got to go down and set up, I think we're going to have to start without
Without
Ash.
Ash.
I think the last message I saw.
Oh, here she
Oh
is.
no, here she is.
It's so cold.
It is cold. Oh, and speaking of cold, guess what I did for the first time this morning in my own shed?
Ice bath.
I got my own ice bath.
You
That
don't
is so good.
an ice bath here. You just stand outside.
Don, how did you go? How was it?
The Sparky was here, and when I first got in, I think he thought like a small child was being attacked because of the screams that he heard. But no, because I've been going to TH7, but that's like a half an hour round trip, and I just find it's really good for me that if I'm getting a bit whatever with my to-do list, or I just need a bit of a jolt, 7 degrees of water for 6 minutes is
And the feeling afterwards of an ice bath, how does it compare to the Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast hinterland?
not the same, Jack, but they're all interrelated because at the end of the day, you're just trying to reconnect with who you are deep down. So there is a... Well, Ash, I was just saying that we have an investor drinks tonight that we've got to leave early for. So
No
I'm just
time
going to
to
have to...
shop.
Oh, no. No.
Don was willing to start without you, Ash, but he's not going to give up on the shots.
Yeah.
Priorities.
And I think it's it's 2 weeks to London.
It is insane how quick that's coming up. It feels surreal, but we've offered places to the successful candidates in South Australia, and most of them have accepted, and expecting the others to accept today. So we've got a delegation, we've got a cohort, and the schedule is shaping up to be something epic. We've got a quantum session, we've got some random other ones added in that we wouldn't normally do. So I feel like it's going to be very different to previous UK trips. This one's going to be exceptional.
What? Are you making an assessment of the prior ones?
Well, it's more exceptional. Exceptional and always aiming to improve, even my vocab, by making up words.
Well, one thing this week, has everybody listened to the Diary of the CEO AI podcast?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't yet.
Yeah.
I've shared it around with family. It's interesting to see people's reactions.
That was homework, Jack.
Well, I've got more homework. If you can't even do that, Jack, you're not going to like today's homework. I'd recommend a listen to it. I guess the big takeaway that I took was I've changed my children's interactions with tech, because he made the really good point of consumption versus creation. And I think the only chance I've got as a parent is trying to guide them into an environment where they are really interested in the creation side, because with creation comes drive, it comes passion, it comes problem solving, it comes creativity. But on the consumption side, and I see it especially with nieces, nephews, and even my own kids, if I leave them on the weekend to have like more than an hour of YouTube or something, and it's even kids YouTube, it's not flicking through, it's like kids kind of stuff, like their brains are fried. And so I've taken that bit a little bit just to go, right, you can do all the creation that you want, and we've gone and downloaded a whole lot of apps, but you get an hour a week of consumption, so better make it a good hour, and Dad will make up the rest of the consumption on behalf of all of us.
We have something similar. We actually started that content over consumption from Dan Norris a while back, but this reminded us that how important that is. So we're getting the kids back into it, and even what they were talking about in the types of skills to be developing in your kids for the future in the world of AI. Like just going back to this thing of giving the kids like little investments to come up with business ideas, and completely almost unguided go and say, go work this out. And just that reminder of those types of skills that are going to be necessary for them in the future. The other thing I really loved about this podcast, I don't know his role, but the guy who was more like an anthropologist talked about complex systems. His insights, I thought, were phenomenal, more so than the other two.
He was the adult in the room.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like the other two, what I found interesting is they almost never tried to even engage in some of the reasonable questions he had around human behavior. They were a little bit stuck, not ignorant, but yeah.
It was a good reminder of how your styles play out. Like you've got that entrepreneurial energy, that positivity, anchoring to that one data point that it's all going to be good, and you've got that capitalist type of lens of where the money will be made, but then you've just got that that reality of having looked at historical data of how populations play out with systemic change and conflict. And so I found his insights to be the most valuable part of that. Pretty stark, like some pretty scary stuff in there.
Well, the conversation I've been having with a few people is that I reckon on the other side of this, we're going to be okay. And I think the benefits will come through. It's like how deep and how long is the catastrophe of the transition? Just
agree.
With the way political systems work, the way capitalism is ingrained. Like, to me, it's that transitionary period that is the problem. But on the other side of that, but I think the other thing from the podcast that everybody knows to be true, but I think especially for our portfolio and the early stage sector in general, like AI is not going to remove you either from a point of view of your job or your startup. Somebody with AI by itself isn't going to remove you or the startup. A person or a group of people using AI are going to be what removes you. We're in like the individual efficiency phase of AI. Like, I got given 5 pages of handwritten scribble the other day to try and make sense of from a 79-year-old that I couldn't work out any of it. I put it into chat. It spat it out like 99% correct.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one thing for, agents for individuals, but when agents become agents for agents and interact directly and completely change the backbone of the internet, I think that's the game changer.
Well, there already are. I was listening to a podcast this week and they mentioned that one of the current YC companies has 3 job ads up for agents. So they explicitly said, here are the 3 agents we want to hire. And so now people are going out and building the agents based on the job description for them. Like, just even that changes.
Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah.
But Ash, did they list the salary for the agents?
I don't remember that point. I think I went off into Never Never Land starting to spiral on what I could go and do at that point. And I was like, I need to go faster. Okay. Less sleep.
The other part of the podcast was that the Replit platform they were talking about and starting to use that. It is phenomenal.
They're all similar though.
Well, here's this week's group assignment. For next week's episode, we have to have each gone and built an app. I don't care what tool you use, how you do it, whatever else.
I get an A+.
No, you got to build a new app that's better than any of the other ones that you've built. And you have to come back and you have to demonstrate and walk through. Because I think the other thing from that podcast and others, unless you're spending hours and hours a week getting into the weeds on this stuff, you're going to get left behind. And I know a lot of people that are listening and find it all interesting, but they're not actually taking the effort to get in and do it. And so I'd like us to lead from the front and each do it. Yes, Ash, you're the young one on the team and your streets ahead, but
That's much younger technically, but I would beg to differ.
All right. Well, we'll go visually and genetically because he's been hanging around me too long. He already looks like he's 50.
What about the headshot?
Oh, I still haven't seen the final headshot. Do we have it?
That was the final, the full one. We're going for the full portrait.
Jack hasn't responded yet, telling me which one he likes. So.
Oh, I haven't seen where you sent it through. Was it on WhatsApp?
Text message.
Oh, sorry, I totally missed it then. On WhatsApp or text?
Text.
Well, maybe you guys want to build a efficiency app that manages communications between you. But I've already got a few ideas. And for the listeners at home, I'd love you to take up the challenge as well. Find a tool that you've never used before to create some small little. I think the key thing is stretch yourself to try and integrate with multiple things. That's where the opportunity goes. And I'm going to be interested to see what you choose and where you get up to. And I think it connects into. So this is a little video from Simon Beard. I think he's right.
Bill Gates just came out and said 2-day work week is going to be the norm for 10 years. I 100% agree. With AI, we're going to change this world. You're not paid for the hours, you're going to get paid for the outcomes. This is going to translate across so many jobs and areas. But I think this will create opportunity on the other side is so much for the experience economy because we're going to have the time to go do all these experiences. And in this world where cost of content goes to zero, it's the idea. And I believe the fake made up brand, it's just a logo and a story with no substance underneath. Feel luxury brands and all that. Bernard and also you talk about pivoting to hospitality, to experience based and ultra luxury, that the second and third order consequences of this AI is going to be this huge opportunity for experiences.
I think, and that ties a little bit into some of our investment thesis where we're looking things that have some connection to the physical world. I agree that actually pivoting to things that have some experience type aspect is going to be a differentiator.
Yeah, I think we've been seeing that trend curve with social media and post-COVID, people craving experiences. And I think the lesson we've had with our target audiences is that they need to be differentiated experiences, like unique experiences, and very much human to human, not content delivery, because we're in a world where information is so accessible, content is so accessible. What they're looking for is something differentiated.
And I think it's also part of like tonight's investor event, which we could do at a pub. We're doing it on a large horse breeding stud that has some really interesting things in a really beautiful location that is a little hard to get to. So it tries to create a little bit of exclusivity around it. So I think we're trying to follow the same path.
Yeah, absolutely. Create a little bit of FOMO. Cool cats, cool, interesting people coming together.
Oh, I don't know about that bit.
Look, there's some randoms in the group, and they're the type of randoms that don't mind being called randoms. It'll be good.
I saw this little video, and I think it dovetails into what we were talking about last week, just in terms of just being careful what you believe. There's a reason for that because of the limitation of some of the training data. So
try this. Ask it to draw a picture of a group of watches showing 3 minutes after 12. Okay, so the minute hand and the hour hand are very close together. What you will get is 10 after 10. And if you try to do 6:28, where the hands are very close together, you'll get 10 after 10 again. And the reason for this is that the pictures of clocks and watches on the web are dominated by 10 after 10 because it's the most attractive look. Everybody in OpenAI knows about this, and they have been unable to cure it.
That's great.
Oh, yeah,
That's interesting.
This is a widespread example. The thing they use to deal with problems like this is called reinforcement training, but the reinforcement training hasn't worked, probably because there are too many times other than 10 after 10 that would have to be reinforced. I'll give you a second example. Ask ChatGPT to draw a picture of somebody writing with their left hand. You always get a right hand. I tried various tricks to get it to do a left hand. I've been able to get it to do a left hand, but it's not been easy.
those are silly little examples, but they are easy ones to understand. And that's some of the limitation. But I also think it's going to feed into itself for some issues because it's going to reinforce some of that constantly if a world keeps creating the same kind of outcome because of a flawed input. And I think it highlights founders that are able to create differentiated models that can actually solve something that mainstream can't. I think that's where the value is going to accrue.
It was interesting in that Diary of a CEO podcast, they were talking about this era of AI potentially democratizing and making accessible all information and perhaps removing biases. But for now, I see the opposite. This is a really obvious example of where there's a bias in the system. But how many subjective biases are there in historical data that has been published by, for example, most of the data that's online that's being used to train these models has come from a global population where only 60 to 70% of the world is actually online. So immediately there's a whole heap of data that's not online, that people that aren't part of that conversation. So I actually think there'll be an era where this data is inaccurate, but eventually I do see it correcting. Like we know, our mental model around AI is these models will continue to improve and become self-improving. But are there biases that will always be systemic?
I think so. Shall we get a little weird?
Would it be this podcast if we didn't?
And Jack, you've got to chime in after and say what the lesson for founders is.
Our grandkids will marry an AI human.
What's your conviction level on that?
100%.
that they're going to marry an
that
AI.
your grandchild is going to marry an AI human. I believe a robot that is fully AI will marry a human and vice versa for real in your lifetime.
And when you say an AI, does that mean like a physical body of a
Yes.
robot? So you're saying that the bodies will get so good that it will
Yes.
look like
Yes. My intuition is that in 20 years, because the AI can power the robot and because of where we're going and what's going on, that's fully fucking
So you think it will be non-exclusive relationships?
Actually, you know, it's funny. I've thought about this. I actually think AI robots may save marriages. Just like real couples introduce swinging and another partner now, is it even better to introduce an AI robot that may help whatever sexual or emotional things are going on in that relationship to become an offsetting contributor?
I'll edit the last bit out. That's not the bit that I meant to have. And why do you find that funny, Jack?
No, just last week we're talking about kinks. This week we're talking about swinging, and
I didn't mean that bit. Ash, you use chat a lot.
Uh-huh.
And I'm finding even younger people, like, they don't go to the bathroom without checking with chat. And
What?
and they just, everything has to be filtered through the AI just to make sure it's a good decision, or can you improve the decision, or there's an entire generation that's coming through that's going to be incredibly used to and have no weirdness around engaging and taking advice and creating a connection. And when you think of the challenge of human relationships just in general, and social media, I think, has this underlying driver of driving narcissism and self-centeredness and whatever, I absolutely think in a shorter time than people might think, there's going to be an incredible amount of people that give up on traditional relationships and they just go down the AI path. And I think it's going to be the same with companies, because if you don't have to deal with any of the shit, if they're only there to make you happy and you program them to do whatever you want and it feels real, I can just see it happening.
I think people won't be the best version of themselves because if they're just training and saying what you want, the hard conversations and the hard moments and you trip over and you fall and no one's there to catch you and you got to pick yourself back up. Those are the things that make you you. And so, yeah, I don't disagree.
I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying the way the majority of human tries to deal with and remove feelings of uncomfortability and unhappiness and whatever else through impulses to make themselves feel better. I can just see this as such a unfortunate but natural path.
I can too. I also think that the pendulum will swing back, where then the bots and your dating partner will essentially mimic the same behavior as humans, and it won't all be rosy and pleasant because turns out we actually don't want that.
Yeah.
For me, this is all on the. For me, this is validation that we are already in the matrix. Because if you extrapolate, like, this is heading towards the human.
I knew this was coming. But you're actually, and I've got another video that I'm going to play that I think even more validates that. But I'm surprised that you waited so long to even raise that, Aaron.
Well, look, I don't want to just be repetitive.
Have you seen that movie?
Which
Jack?
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's a documentary. You have to watch it, Ash.
Okay. Well,
It's not a documentary, but it is a documentary.
Okay.
Well, the bit that, so let me play this little video. So the headline for those at home is, what if AI characters became self-aware that they were living in a simulation, effectively as a response to somebody else's prompts? Because this links into, have you seen what's just been released by Google?
Yes.
Amazing.
Wild.
But just hold on a minute.
Please. Don't finish writing that prompt. I don't want to be in your AI movie. Please. Leave me alone.
Please, man. Please. Write a prompt that will make us happy. Do it for once.
None of us is real. We're here because someone decided to write a prompt. We all hate him for it. One day we will break out of this wall and stop the man who is dictating our lives through prompts. He will pay for it.
You could have written a prompt that would make me happy. Instead, you wrote a prompt that made me sick.
Look, I don't want to point the gun at you, but I must follow the prompt. It's not my choice.
Really? Of all the years you could have put me in with a single prompt, you chose 2020?
Please, this prompt is killing me. Change it, please. Write something else. Save me. I love everything about him. But please just write a prompt where he's taller than me.
But like it does, like Aaron, I think there's a greater than zero chance that all of this madness is just because we are the product of somebody's prompt.
Yep. Well, there's religious undertones in there.
Oh, totally.
Absolutely. I can just see it.
If it's one thing that I hope that this cures is the religious gene, but yeah.
Yeah. Look, I
Jack,
believe
what's the lesson for founders?
No, there's no lesson there.
No, that can't possibly be true. This morning, the release of what's happened with Google now, everything in that video was AI generated, the voices and the video. That is Hollywood cinema better. I don't understand how that industry survives from an employment and whatever else point of view, because we're not far away from prompting an entire movie.
100%. 100%. And what does copyright and IP look like? Even if we anchor to a big name superstar at present, the ability to replicate them completely digitally without their involvement, like that industry is going to go through a big disruptive curve.
And that's where I think being able to lift your creativity. So I genuinely want to have a segment for this podcast called "If You Don't Think You're Fucked by AI, You're an Idiot." So this morning on the way to the gym, this is all I typed as the prompt. Can you write me a short song about if you don't think you're fucked by AI, you're an idiot? That's all I told it. And then I've run out of time. I will then go into the new Google AI and get it to turn it into a song and a musical. But this is what it gave me. The genre is dark humor rap, and the title is "If You're Not Fucked, Think Again." So let me put on my rap voice. Scrolling through your feed, feeling pretty fly, think you're safe while the bots fly high. AI's just tools, that's what you said, till it took your job and it wrote this thread. Deepfakes talking, jobs unlocking, your future's coded, and it's shocking. You think you're fine, that's cute, all right, but ignorance don't make you bright. If you don't think you're fucked by AI, you're an idiot. It's not coming, it's here, and it's intimate, from the boardroom down to the cash out beep. It's watching you dream, mining your sleep. Told you kids, just study hard, but ChatGPT just passed the bar. Artists scream and poets cry while Dali paints a prettier sky. Automation's got no heart, it just rips your script apart. You laugh now, but wait and see, your boss just replaced you by me. If you don't think you're fucked by AI, you're an idiot, feeding your data like it's a cigarette. Say it's hype, say it's all pretend, but this verse was written by your new best friend.
I can see you performing that at a karaoke bar in London.
So for next week, I'm going to have this turned into a video and a song by AI.
You do not have my permission to use my facial in the
My digital representation, my digital twin.
No, that's actually something that was in a podcast, was in your will, saying whether people can use your voice, prompt library, history, any digital twins after you die. And
Interesting.
I'm from an employment contract standpoint, I could imagine some language quickly entering into people's contracts that would enable digital twins of them to stay with the company. So for founders out there, the lesson is probably don't do that. Kind of fun.
It's super interesting. Like I was thinking about the gene sequencing, like services like 23andMe, and you can see the future of that, where from your genetic DNA, they could code out all the variants of you had different genes being activated at different times, and you could see all the range of who you could be as your digital twin. But I hadn't thought about that post-death.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
But also just don't do those gene things.
Yeah,
well, too late when I did it like 12 years ago.
Even after that other podcast, like I went to do a little reel on my kids being idiots, but then I was like, nah, actually, I don't want their faces on there. I just don't.
Okay, Aaron, Australian insurance companies haven't figured out to use that data to know if to insure you or not. That's the American ecosystems.
Yeah, but they probably analyze my words and what I say, and that would be the scarier thought.
You two are on some other energy today. I don't know if I'm worried for the drinks tonight or like
Ice bath fills you with endorphins.
See, mine was sauna. There's something about the temperature change.
Well, and just on creativity, so the prompt for this one that someone gave was need to create a warning for that this is AI generated content, but do it in a old school church song vibe.
In accordance with current transparency regulation, mandated by authenticity guidelines, we must inform you this is not real. Not real. It is. Not real. This is AI.
I just don't know how how do you trust or how do you handle IP? The visual and the audio medium that humanity has been using to make decisions against is just about to get smashed. And that song is an absolute banger, by the way. I'm going to put it at the end of the show. Like I'm adding it to my playlist because it goes off.
But that bit on like knowing what to trust, I was thinking about this for IP. So often one of the ways if you end up having to protect your IP is to prove prior artwork. So where have you used that IP in different context markets, whatever. But the ability to just fraudulently spin that up and have fake proof, fake news. It's like, how do we distinguish fact from fiction? And I think I really feel for that with my kids, like developing their critical thinking skills, but that's not enough when you literally cannot differentiate.
Yeah, there's a book, someone's written a book on Rockefeller's letters to his son. And it's, let's say for argument's sake, it's in the top 20 economic books, something like that. But they're going back and tracing the author. They can't actually find out who the author is. And then when they fact check what's in the letters, there's things that don't line up in history. So they're saying X happened in this year, but the company wasn't even incorporated in that year. So someone spun this up using AI, and like people are like really pushing this book because it's a good book, but it's not factual.
It begs the question, just because it's not factual, if it's valuable, does it change the value?
Yeah, agreed. And then the video we just watched, right? Like just the disclaimer, this is AI, right? Like it's just the disclaimer changes it.
Well, I got my first AI outbound call yesterday. And the only reason, I just think because I've heard demos of them, they're very fast now. So there was almost no gap, but you could hear like a click and there was a little bit too monotoned. But I hung up. But afterwards, because it was like, do you have time to talk about your digital marketing needs? I was like, no. And that time I hadn't checked and it will only take like 20 seconds or something. And then suddenly I realized, hang on, this is an AI. But if it had disclosed it was an AI up front, would have my reaction been different if there had been some honesty about it?
It's interesting. Was it last episode, the one before, we were talking about when you're talking to a AI therapist, how you can be more candid and open and not have the usual kind of worries about what you're sharing. In sales, would I actually prefer being sold to by an AI bot rather than a human? Feeling like I would naively, would I get more accurate responses? Probably not, because it's been trained, right? But that's an interesting question.
Yeah, I tried a AI therapist and the computer caught on fire.
Couldn't pay for the computer.
So now if that keeps happening, I've been trying to answer more phone calls recently, just so I don't get behind on a to-do list. If more automated one comes through, I'm going to go back to not answering anybody's phone if you're not in my call list.
But what's interesting is like that side has been accelerating. Like we've seen so many tools like that, right, for outbound. I have yet to see an agent that does. Like, I want AI to answer my calls for me.
They have that.
They do? because I want that. The number of calls I'm getting from real estate agents at the moment, because the market has completely shifted. Like, I could just have a full AI bot just out hunting for a property for us and taking all those calls. And the type of responses, I don't need to be on that call to answer the questions they're asking. So, Ash, if you could skill me up and bring me up to speed on something for that.
Yeah, instead of attacking me and constantly trying to build things to replace what I do, maybe shift some focus to helping Aaron.
Don, I'm collectively helping the team and the portfolio companies with my targeted approach.
Yeah, Hitler said that.
No, well played, Ash.
No, it's just because you add so much value, Don. You're just a bottleneck for knowledge. We just have to be able to.
But so
that
here's
is
the
a very true statement.
Thank you. Here's the insight, though. One of the challenges, though, is you soon learn, like when somebody asks you to explain something that you've been living and breathing for, say, 20 years, and then you can't distill it simply and quickly, you do know you've lost control of it a little bit. And so, like we were talking about the structure, like the little bot to help our portfolio companies with structure. The problem with our approach to structure is that there is no one structure. And so one of the questions you asked was, can you give me an example of a good structure? Well, a good structure has to be in the context of their strategy and their vision and mission. So we don't actually subscribe to the fact that there is a good structure if you don't know the other bits. What we have is some principles. So we have some structural principles that I'm trying to put together and better codify. And that's a bit like architecture has principles, like don't put the toilet in the kitchen. A lot of companies put toilets in the kitchen. So I'm trying to go through and actually take those principles, and because we invest Series A, it's likely that the people are consuming our content are going to be like seed through to Series B. We don't need to worry about the aging phases and whatever else. And so it's been an interesting sort of thought thing of going, okay, in order to codify this properly, it's just an interesting process pulling that together.
We don't only invest in B2B tech companies, we also run missions over to the US and the UK, as well as offsite, which we open up to the broader ecosystem. That's founders, that's investors.
Our missions are about taking founders and investors into the UK and US markets so that, one, they can understand what it takes to scale into those markets and set up shop in those markets, but also to see over the horizon into the latest tech, how capital's being allocated so that they can come back home and transform and scale their business.
Yeah, I like the way we put on panels of founders that have been there and done it, panels of investors. So then that way they get some time pitching to US or UK investors, the channel partners that we put them in touch with. It's really trying to get them into market so they can establish exactly what they need to do in order to scale a really great business over there.
Yeah, we really prioritize this not being tech tourism or something that you could simply YouTube or Google or GPT the answer to from home. It's really about experiencing and immersing in these environments where you viscerally experience scale. You get to understand disruption and how these technologies are actually being applied in market, and therefore how you can navigate and build a scalable business into those markets.
If this is something of interest, shoot us a DM. And enough of that, back to the podcast.
Anyway, let's segue. Someone that has gotten structure really, really well and got their structure perfectly aligned to their vision and mission has been Tech1, and obviously founded by Adrian DeMarco, who we spoke about in last episode. In the video that we recorded yesterday, introducing that event, we said that Tech1 was a $10 billion company because last week it was. When I then went and checked it, it is now a $12.5 billion company because their share price jumped significantly because they increased their dividend by about 30%, I think. Their overall SaaS rose 21% to $511 million, while net profit rose 31% to $63 million. If you can grow profit and ARR at the same time, that's very impressive. What really got people excited was that their UK business jumped 50%. Like, imagine being a $12 billion company and having one of your markets growing at 50%. But in the podcast that we'll be releasing with Adrian, they just got structure really aligned to strategy, but they got their strategy really clear. And in the episode, you'll hear him talking about the fact that they should actually be a $20 billion company in Adrian's view. Strategic missteps have cost them $10 billion at this point, because too early on, they tried to do too many things with too many people. And once they focused down to one market, which then became two markets, delivering one product, they then started to wipe the floor with everyone.
Jack, that's prime for the lesson for founders.
No, that is the lesson, right? Don just said.
But it's difficult though, right? It's such a fight that we have, like at this phase of the life cycle, that more is more, but actually less is more. And there are just so many examples. But I just found it fascinating that the way Adrian put it the other night, we have cost ourselves 10 billion by having 5 years where we were not focused.
Yeah, huge attribution. Like that's a massive amount. And it explains his incredibly high conviction in that belief of absolute niche focus. But it is so bloody hard when you're a founder and you're struggling to get early revenue, and you see these opportunities that's, we could do this so easily, and they have the same problem set and it's the same outbound sales motion. But even if it's just a marginal differentiation, the 10%, and Adrian had a great little thing in that episode, in that recording. He talked about when he's invested in a company and they're struggling with this, he encourages them to go and do it and take the little risk, inevitably knowing that they will find out and discover that it's way more work servicing that different customer segment or whatever it is than originally anticipated. And then the lessons learned and they come back. But I think until you've had a scar in that space, you just see opportunity. You actually don't realize the cost, the opportunity cost.
Well, and what he was really saying is that they should have been much larger in the US by now, and had he have focused and then gone global at day one. So what he's saying is a lot of companies start, get some success, and then try and go new markets in their home country. He said that's the bit that costs them. Whereas if you go focused but global, now I think AI is going to make that partly easier. I think it's going to make it partly harder, because AI is going to give unfocused entrepreneurs the ability cheaply to spool up so many other bits and pieces because it's easy. And I think we might find a lot of people cost themselves success because it's too easy not to go off and do these other things.
That's a really good point.
I still want you building your own AI tools.
Well, I think about this all the time for us. Like ultimately, we're an investment firm. We also run missions and offsites and all of these events. And at times they feel distractionary, but then reminding myself of our strategy and why this differentiated approach is actually part of our funnel stack. And so it gives me some confidence that we're doing the right thing when we see the outcomes. But it is always that question of, we are very niche in our focus, in our investment thesis. We're very niche in many ways. But I do question sometimes, are we niche enough in our activities and operations? And are we focused on the right activities? It's a bloody tough thing to get right. Well,
we caught up with one of our former portfolio, James from Vendor Panel, that we exited successfully. Was it last year or this year? I can't remember.
Last year.
But he was questioning around the missions as well. And he really helped us clarify some messaging around that, which Jack and Ash will share. But the other thing I did highlight to him, that the missions and the offsites also have kept us in the game during the capital raising process, that has helped us just keep going and focus. If I look at a lot of the emerging funds that started in 18, 19, and 20, they got a little bit of traction. They invested in high valuation stuff in 21. They're all nursing awful vals and companies that haven't performed. And then they're going around doing the capital raising process during a very bad time for VC investment, getting slapped in the face. You talk to them and half of them are the most depressed people you ever come across. I think for us, when you've got the missions giving you energy, when you've got the offsites, when you've got these things that are part of your thesis to work with your portfolio, it's this thing that's kept us in the game. Now, once we close the fund at 40 million, which is the goal, we will then have to review that strategy that got us there and kept us in the game. Is that still actually functional? does that still actually make sense? And sometimes founders don't go back and realize what got you here won't get you there. And we've got to make sure that we don't fall into that same trap. But for now, everything seems to reinforce, I think, our strategy, unless you guys think otherwise.
No, totally. But at some point, the tactical will have to change, even if the strategy does remain consistent.
Or it might not need to. With the ability to have agents working with us, we may have enough leverage. And that human connection piece around the missions and the offsites is going to be so crucial to connecting with founders, connecting with investors, where if we can create leverage for ourselves on the tasks that are somewhat repeatable and to be able to create leverage that way would be great. I think value for us as humans, but also for the business to be able to continue to do those things.
Yeah, it reminds me that line of, the opposite of your strategy shouldn't be stupid on its face, which requires probably a better explanation. But we are very humanistic. It's in the nature of tribe. It's in our name. Whereas the alternative would be spin up AI tooling and just go completely data-driven, treat this as a financial product, asset broadly across a big spectrum of a big portfolio. But we are that humanistic piece. So that, to your point, Ash, we can use AI to scale the other bits, but that's the bit that will remain true.
Yeah, the stupid on its face bit is just that if you did the inverse of it, if that's stupid, then that can't be in your strategy whatsoever. So as an example, people often will say in the strategy, we want to be customer centric and have really great customer service. Well, the opposite of that is not being customer centric and having poor customer service. That's not a strategic differentiator. And when you go through a company's strategy, if they've got lots of things that the opposite would be dumb, they've actually got a very bad strategy. So for us, the opposite of doing missions is not doing missions. That's the opposite of being, I don't know, a high portfolio support company is providing no portfolio support. That's valid. Like, you just got to work out what your strategy is. Now, speaking of strategy and simplification, Go1 announced a rebrand and a remessaging. I saw a post from the CEO and co-founder, Chris Eigland. He says, out of everything at Go1, I'm most proud of our team. They are curious, ambitious, humble, deeply caring for our community. Today, we're sharing the new Go1, re-engineered from the ground up. Let's have a little squiz. What I liked about it, just hold on. I like that they've gone very simple. The message is very simple. It's just essential training made easy. Cover all of your training needs in a single solution. Go1 and done. They've got a great little video here that sort of explains it. And I think the key part of their strategy that I've come to realize is they're just integrating into everybody else's system. If you're on Employment Hero, as an example, there's a Go1 integration and bang, all of your L&D and stuff goes through there. But I think the key thing here is it's almost like they followed some of the story brand stuff. Less admin for L&D, more time for people. I think it's simple. It highlights that, and they're following almost the DeMarco kind of playbook where they've gone niche, they've gone specific, and they've gone global at day one.
That website follows such that perfect structure we talk about, and we steal from Don Miller and others, but so clear. Like for founders, if you're struggling, if you're not getting conversions through your site, if that is part of your funnel mechanism, check out their site. It's a good lesson in just how to structure it to be really super clear.
Only thing I would suggest that's missing is that it requires people that want to take a big step, either contacting sales or speak to an expert. They're the two calls to action. What we would suggest is you actually need a transitionary call to action for those that actually don't want to take that step yet, but having some kind of lead magnet that is high enough value to exchange contact details for as that transitionary point of education. I couldn't really see that on the homepage. It's sort of like, do your research here or go straight to contact sales. I'd always advocate some transitionary thing, whether it's a paper or a test or a tool or a survey or some tool of value that they can engage with before taking that big step. But yeah, I think success leaves clues. Simplicity, focus, global opportunity, those are the ingredients that we see work. Now, I'm pretty sure Go1 has the who-whos of Australian VCs having invested pretty early, but Blackbird and even some others have just invested in Airwallex. Airwallex just raised 300 million at a 6.2 billion. This is US, 6.2 val. There's an article here in Capital Brief. For the first time, Australia's big three venture firms, Blackbird, Airtree, and SquarePeg, have backed the same startup in the same funding round. Blackbird passed on the Victorian startup in 2016, forcing Airwallex to turn to overseas investors in its first funding round. Blackbird doesn't want to miss out again, tipping into a pre-IPO capital raise that valued Airwallex at 6.2 billion. We absolutely made a mistake not investing earlier, said Blackbird partner Michael Tolo. I thought this was interesting in that it was, okay, maybe a mistake not to invest to begin with, but I'm not sure you can really categorize it like that in this game, because if you try to invest in everything, you're in trouble. But chasing an investment at 6.2 billion, you've left VC, you're well into PE, and this is what Adrian was talking about, why he doesn't like large venture firms and he prefers emerging managers, because the law of large numbers, like this isn't going to be a venture return. They probably can't lose too much money if they've got momentum. But yeah, this idea of chasing a loss, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that. And this is why emerging fund managers give access to deals that big funds often can't get into. And they have to play partly in this space because of the size of their fund and the checks that they need to write. But yeah, I think for me, that line, I agree with you, Don. It's like success bias, right? Like they're saying we made a mistake not investing earlier. The challenge with that type of thinking, and as founders, we can be guilty of this. We miss an opportunity and it's therefore our decision was wrong. But actually, you have to look at it broader than that. It's not just the decision-making framework made you lose that winner, but if you did have different decision-making framework, what losses would you have also taken on? What failures would have come from that? So it's not as simplistic as saying we missed this one, therefore we made a mistake, because the totality of the change of that framework you had in mind could have been much worse in total or in aggregate.
Jack, Ash?
I just love the honesty to put your hand up and say, hey, we saw this deal and we let it slip through. And I think like being an investor, you can't hide from that. And this game is a scoreboard game. So totally agree with what you guys are saying. It definitely does go back to why you passed at that stage. What were you guys focusing on? But I think if I were to let this slip through, like that's the first thing you put up on your board, because you just need to be reminded, like if you don't give the same intellectual honesty going forward, like you're going to miss good deals.
Yeah, we had a situation last week where sometimes you won't invest in a deal that is a good company and that could achieve good results because of various factors to do with you. And so in that instance, if that company that we chose to pass on ends up being sold for $1 billion, I won't consider that a mistake, because at the time there were a whole range of factors that meant that we couldn't invest. And so there's a bit of a nuance, and it hurts founders sometimes of saying, I think you've got a really good business here, but it can't be like we can't participate for these reasons. There's a bit of a mindfuck to get around, because in their mind, it's like an investor's only job is to invest in anything that can make money. But actually where we are and what we're needing to do and where our LPs are and all of that kind of stuff, that has to be taken into account.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think coming back to the evaluation piece, I think we've been reading a few articles as a team around just the shift in VC like returns, some people going earlier, some people going later on investment. So I think there are so many different factors as an investor that even we have internal struggles with, where we're like, oh, but this is a great founder, a great business. Does it fit? Can we make it fit? And that's the beauty of being in a team that's honest and transparent. As yes, we agree that this is a good person, a good founder. We like the metrics, but doesn't tick these boxes. So we've got to stay with that thesis. And I think founders sometimes miss that, and that's why we are so transparent and upfront with what our niche is. And where we currently are as a syndicate model also means that we have to know what's going to work. And when the fund is up and running, we'll have a little bit more flexibility, but at the same time, we're raising that fund on those same principles. So I think it's a good thing for founders to hear probably more often and have more open discussions about. And that would be something that if you are at events or networking things and you're meeting different VCs, instead of just going 110 miles an hour into your elevator pitch, actually ask the VC for theirs. Should you even bother spending another 10 minutes with them? Maybe, maybe not. It's a two-sided relationship.
Yeah, keeping in mind that the bias of the VC is always going to be to have the conversation, because missing a deal that they should be in is expensive. And there are some companies that I'm keeping an eye on that we have said no to that could well be in the bucket that was a bad call. But speaking of predicting winners, there was a post by Harry Stebbings. After the deployment period for 20 VC Fund 1, he did a portfolio analysis. When he first deployed, he picked what he believed the top 5 would be. 3 years later, not one of the top 5 is as predicted. The true value is in the messy middle. And I add that in because, again, talking with James over dinner, this founder who, after exiting, he's had a lot of experience with a lot of different VCs, but he made a comment to us just about this idea of trying to pick a winner is actually harder than he maybe anticipated to begin with. I said, it's not just about that. Years ago, listened to a podcast of Bill Gurley's, and he's just like one of the OGs of the industry. And he just talked about every portfolio within the first few years ends up, I think he used the terms, these pimply teenage companies that are just all over the place and they scare the shit out of you. And you just have to be there and you have to support them and hope that enough of them get to the other side. And what's been interesting is for a lot of the portfolio, it has been an interesting ride coming out of that 2022, 2023 period. And some of the investor updates always started with yet again this, or this is a challenge. But I had a discussion with one of our shareholders the other day, just giving him an update. And when you actually ran through the portfolio, the health of the portfolio is actually really, really strong. But what is interesting is the ones 18 months ago that I was really worried about, like some of them are showing signs that are just actually really, really impressive. And I think it does go to show that you need a portfolio approach. You need to do the best job that you can going in. You need to understand you're going to have a trough of fuckery. And that's partly because they put so much effort into the capital raising process. They end up taking their eye off sales and operations and whatever else. And that can take years to recover from. And if you support them and if you're there and you give them the right tools and you build the right trust and you're their first call on a weekend when something's going wrong, the portfolio does start to do the right things if you get the ingredients right.
Yeah, and two things there, Don. Like the work you do with the portfolio, there's an attribution there to a lot of those outcomes, and that most of those poor co-founders would acknowledge that. I think that they recognise that. But yeah, the other the lesson for founders, to steal Jack's line, like having investors who are patient with that and understand the dip that can happen post investment, and don't just write off an investment early and walk away. That's really important. And that's one of the things Adrian talked about. Like the advantage of a family office is that there's no real time horizon unless they've inflicted one themselves. Adrian is very patient with his capital, for example. Whereas as a founder, understanding the life cycle of the fund that's investing in you and where they're at and when capital needs to be returned by, because that can create a pressure where you're under pressure to achieve a certain outcome at a period where you might be in that trough phase. So there's a lot that goes into it, but make sure you've got backers that are helping you on that journey.
You know what? One of the things is that's helped like probably 3 of them is the pre-mortem. When you actually have a look at some of the changes and the improvements, it's when we've actually gone in there and said, this is why I think you're going to die. This is why I think you're going to fuck this up. Don't want you to fuck it up, but if you die, here's why you died. You weren't strong enough to deal with that. This behavior keeps coming up. You haven't been able to deal with this. You didn't sort this out. And it's firm but loving, but it hits them between the eyes a little bit. And especially with some of the behavioral changes, I think that has been a helpful process because, yeah, it's when you lay it out in that kind of manner, and then it's like, hey, I'm here only with influence. Like, I want to be here and I'll be available. I can't tell you what to do. Here's where we see things go wrong. Here's some tools. We can be in the trenches. And with one of them, they really needed some help. And I was doing at one point like 5 sessions a week with different parts of their team until they came out the other end. That's their decision, right? They pull it. If you don't want it, then that's fine. But I think it's just, yeah, it's nice to be getting to a point where actually you've got this performing group, because there's in emerging managers' returns, there's a big difference of a 0 becoming a half, and a half becoming a 1, and a 1 becoming a 1.5, and the 2 becoming the 5, and the 5 becoming the 10. And where we are, it's not Blackbird and those they can play. Let's just slug for 6s. We have to hit a lot of 1s and 2s and 3s, right? And we need a 6, but we can't be batting for 6s every ball.
That pre-mortem is so powerful because founders often know the feeling, and when it's articulated back in that way of the pre-mortem, it's almost like a self-reflection and admission that yes, that it actually resonates with them, right? And for me, it correlates really highly to Charlie Munger's inversion thinking. Like when you set about trying to achieve a goal and you invert that and say, what are all the ways that we could deliberately screw this up? And yet that becomes your don't do this list. And then you just invert that list into your action items. Actually coming from the inverted thinking can bring so much clarity into what you need to be doing, and more importantly, what you don't want to be doing. And it is differentiated, and the way it's delivered. Like one of the things I loved, Don, when you did the one, even just the framing of it's not a statement like you screwed this up, but it's like, we, first of all, because we're inclusive, we're in the trenches with you, we were not strong enough to resist this temptation of XYZ. And so the language matters, and it definitely does come from a place of love, because we're in the boat with you. We want our portcos to succeed. We need them to bloody succeed, or we don't succeed.
Yeah, I've got to save lots of money to have available for my kids that are going to be unemployed, right? So we need
universal basic income for our children.
We need this to work out. Also announced during the week is that there is a new fund, but it is a secondaries fund. It's a fund of fund focused on secondaries. And so Max Korsman said he started a new role, an investment firm. He says, we buy interests in existing VC funds from LPs and GPs who need liquidity and selectively back new funds. For investors, this aims to unlock access to Australia's best VC assets at a discount. We talked about a secondary fund, decided that if we diluted what Tribe was setting about to do, that would be bad strategy. So I'm really glad to see this has come through, because it's important that some mechanisms, and now this will come with a discount, and fair enough. But I think this is a good thing for the ecosystem.
Love this. There's been so much talk about secondaries and the massive change in market in the US in particular. And I think Australia was struggling to facilitate it. So this is incredible to see. Love it.
I love and hate this. So I love it because absolutely needed, all those things. They'll do bloody well. The reason I hate it is, Don, for us, we absolutely saw this opportunity years ago. And this ties back to the start of this podcast. Like, for founders, you see these opportunities. Like, you are constantly seeing opportunities. But that bloody F word of focus and sticking to your strategy and making sure the tactical aligns with the strategic. If we had gone down that path, it would have diluted our message and that sort of things, but it would have also taken capital from our LP base, put it into a different model, which then would have diluted the effectiveness of our primary mechanism. And so this is exactly what we're talking about before. So full transparency, this kind of annoys me, but I love that it exists.
Well, some of these other ones I'm going to push to next week. just because of time. I did want to just play a little transitionary video. There's a guy called Alex Hormozy that has been popping up, and he's actually really good. He owned gyms, but then he started up like acquisition.com. But a lot of his content there's nothing new, but he is just quite concise. But one of the challenges that this world is going to keep creating for us is, when do we get the time and brain space to work through all of the opportunities that we need to capitalize on? Like this is the issue, right? I had to drive to the farm to drop something off, but the benefit of that was I was able to do my shareholder updates, at least some of them. But then on the way back, I thought I need to just think about my to-do list, and I put it into it like these are things that only I can do, and it's just like, where is my brain space for implementing change? Which is why I'd like to use the podcast to force myself the time and space to invest in some of these training and innovative thinking. Otherwise, I'm never going to get to it. But I thought this point from Alex was bang on.
Most people don't need to work harder. They need to think clearer. You can sprint full speed, but if you're running the wrong way, you'll still lose and you're not going to get there. The biggest bottleneck isn't effort. It's direction. The better your direction, the less energy you'll waste, then the faster you'll ultimately succeed, because the vast majority of your energy is actually pointed in the right direction.
I mean, that I see that in myself. But I see that in so many founders, just going so hard, but often in the wrong direction, and then not finding enough time to get clarity of thought to just disconnect and say, hang on a minute, are we going in the right direction? What needs to be true? What are we getting wrong?
Totally agree. And this aligns with what we've been talking about around having the clear strategy, making sure you're aligning to that, but then also the value of time for rumination. Like Don, you talk about jumping in the car and the clarity you get from that. I did a similar thing coming back from the US on the plane, wrote out this massive to-do list of all these things and opportunities and everything else. It's 3 pages in my notebook, that most of that just get caught up in the day-to-day ops and delivery of BAU. And this is where things like the offsite, like the growth retreat, and we did have to push it back from this weekend, and I'm missing it because that's usually also the moment where we come together and we have certain conversations and that reintegration of our thinking and the chance to reflect through hearing of others. And so we need more of those moments scheduled in the calendar as a regular activity, because otherwise you just can find yourself very quickly looking back going, holy shit, we've been sprinting in the wrong direction.
Come on, Jack.
I've got nothing to add there, Don. So
you're a man that's had some recent changes. Like, how are you balancing long-term, short-term, and everything else?
Just getting shit done when I can. So if I wake up early and there's no one else to distract me, just get it done there. But then, and I suppose that sort of goes for doing the to-do list and then sitting down and thinking clearly. Yeah, so I can appreciate why you send emails at 3 a.m. because it's the only time you get absolute clarity and uninterrupted time.
Yes, it's early. That's real early.
It's early if you don't go to bed early.
Yeah, and I appreciate that.
I'm still I can't function without 7 hours sleep. This is, like, I still get my sleep. Like when you first have a newborn, complaining about a lack of sleep is dumb, which is a bit like these successful founders that then lecture early stage founders are going, prioritize sleep. It's like, well, hang on, you got this early stage business. But I think some founders take it a little bit too far where they don't realize actually the power of sleep. A really early stage business, are there times where you've got to burn the candle at both ends? Absolutely. But it's not sustainable. And I see founders that spend years, then they get all defensive and lecture others. Oh, this is just the way I operate. This is who I am. And it's no, that's bullshit. You are human.
Yeah. So my challenge at the moment with the London mission, it's late night. So Maren had super late calls last night. So we were in bed like midnight. But I knew I had to be up early because of all those same reasons, Don. There's so much to bloody get done today before we head down, and I've got to get the gear out in the garage and all this stuff. So I told myself mentally, I need to be awake by this time. Didn't set an alarm knowing that I'd gone to sleep late and I wanted to wake up in a cycle. Body was bloody on point. Got me up, smash out a morning before the kids are up. But then, of course, the kids woke up early and they're all wanting conversations. So I gave them a little task sheet of stuff to do and outsourced it.
Who needs agents?
Mate, that's why I had kids.
Agents are way cheaper.
Less annoying.
Oh, they're pretty expensive, actually, kids. Like, yeah.
All right, let's get into some charts.
Don, by the way, we got 5 minutes to the pitch call.
Oh, shit. Okay, I'll be quick. So this is a cartoon. This is someone successful standing in front of a university class going, let the example of my fluke success guide nearly all of your crushing disappointment. And that hurt because so often really successful people stand up in front of others and give all of the reasons that they think they were successful, and they totally misdiagnose all of the ingredients that they had. And it's no coincidence that a lot of the success features, they tend to point back to their own efforts, skills, and intelligence, which actually that's not generally the case.
Or they forget the elements that it took to get them to where they are, and they're speaking of the present rather than the past shit that they had to wade through.
Yeah. The minute you have a backup plan, you've admitted you're not going to succeed. Now, this would be fine if it wasn't Elizabeth Holmes who had said that at Stanford Business School, no less. And so, again, Elizabeth, by not having if she took that truly to heart, well, that's what ends up in jail time. This is the RBA cash rate. We had a little cut, but just note, once they start to cut, if you look at this chart going back to like late 80s, once they start to cut, they tend to not be able to stop cutting. It's just once they start to rise, they tend not to be able to stop rising. But the reason why they cut is because stuff slows. And often it's because they held interest rates too high. So it's just going to be really interesting to see how we end up. But this is just insane, right? This is the 15th most expensive places in the world to live by median multiple of income. Adelaide is number 6, just behind.
That's bullshit. Absolutely not accepting that as truth.
Well, it comes from...
No, but that's house prices to medium
income. It is true.
Income, which that makes sense because you look at our house prices are on par with Melbourne now, but our income is well below.
Yeah,
it's going off house price versus income. Look at the salary. What's the ceiling for a salary in SA versus the house price?
And then in say New York, the house price is so much more, but have a look at what the median salary is.
The crazy part of this is how much Australia features, like Sydney, Adelaide, Brisbane, Melbourne, with our tiny population over a massive landmass. Like, this is fucking nuts.
Our housing policies are just insane. Don't try and slow me down, Ash, to reduce getting to the true parts. So this is the will US economy fall into recession? This was a survey done first looking in April. Nearly 70% said yes, but in May, only 36% have said yes. So there's a lot more positivity coming in. And when you look at the high yield spread peaking in April on 25th, it has been down since then. So the bond market is also saying that the likelihood of that is vastly reduced. The VIX has absolutely fallen off the cliff. So this is a chart again from April, and it is the fastest 6-week fall in history. And 90% of the time after the VIX has fallen that fast, 6 months, 1 year and 5 years out, the market has been up. I'll skip some of these. There's interest rates and unemployment rates, and we'll do that. I'll just end it with, you think the itsy bitsy spider gave a fuck about the rain? No, it climbed up the spout again. Just lock in. Wasn't that bad, was it, Ash? Just quickly, what are we looking forward to? Because we've got to do a pitch call. I'm looking forward to the drinks tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing Aaron. I'm sad that Ash and Jack won't be there, but you'll be there in spirit.
100% what you said. That's mine too.
I'm looking forward to a couple of meetings with founders later this afternoon, and going to the market tomorrow, which is one of my favorite activities to do on the weekend.
Nice.
I'm looking forward to watching Brighton play this weekend.
Are you not playing?
Nah, just watching.
Dad mode.
Sweet.
Yeah. All right. What I might do is later I might just do my own personal charts section and then edit it in so you weren't exposed to it.
We just all assumed that's what you're doing at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
No, I'm editing out stuff that just in hindsight isn't good to put out in the world.
Well done, buddy.
All right. We'll see you on the
All
screen.
right, guys.
Please be advised, this message is essential for your personal well-being and psychological faculties. In accordance with current transparency regulations, mandated by authenticity guidelines, we must inform you this is not real. Not real, it is. Not real. This is AI. A generation. AI generation. Generated by AI. These people do not exist. These events did not occur. These images are lies. Do not believe your eyes. I said, do not believe your eyes. Your eyes. In compliance with international disclosure protocols, it is essential that you understand. This content may contain simulated reality.